Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello guys, this is Mohsin Azam interacting with you from my YouTube channel Business Innovation. Today we are going to start our 17th lesson of Excel tutorial. The topic which we will discuss today is data validation in Excel. So in data validation in Excel, first of all we will discuss data validation criteria. So data validation criteria, what is basically data validation criteria? So as it's written, data validation will let you define the criteria that can decide that what content the cell can hold. So for example, if you select any blank cell here, you can input the data here. Sorry, here I have some restriction. This blank cell 1 2 3 or ABC you can write here. First what I will do, I will clear all the rules. So what I will do, sorry, home, clear all. Now for example, if I have here a blank cell, I can put a text here, numbers here or text here. But if I want to define certain criteria to input the data in this cell, what I can do, I will go to data, and in data I will click here data validation, and in data validation I will click here data validation, and here in setting I have data validation criteria allow. So in allow I have different options: whole number, decimal, list, data, date, time, text length, and custom. So if I select here whole number, so in the data I have between, here also you can select not between equal to, I will select here between, and 1 minimum and maximum is 50. And now by clicking OK, now as I defined my criteria for this cell is that I can input here only the whole number from 1 to 50. So if I want to write here 51, my Excel will not allow me, and it will give me the message, this value does not match the data validation restriction defined for the cell, cancel. If you want to write here 50, it will accept, because the criteria which we defined for this cell is the whole number 1 to 50. So as it's written here, data validation will restrict the value that can be entered in the cell. So as we discussed here, that this cell is now restricted for the whole number from 1 to 50. 51 cannot be written here. Okay, after this we can access the data validation from data tools and data, as we discussed before, that we can access data validation from data, and here we have data tools, and in data tools we have data validation. Okay, in data validation we will get three options: data validation, circle individual data, and clear validation circle. So data validation, as you discuss here, we can click here and a new dialog box will appear for the data validation, and in this dialog box, in under setting, we can define our criteria, and by clicking OK, the criteria will be implemented. The other two options, circle individual data and clear individual circle, this we will discuss in the upcoming topics. Okay, data validate, okay, this is already discussed. We can create drop down list from the data validation. So for example, if we have here plan, actual, and variance, and if I want to create here the drop down list, what I will do, I will go to data validation, and here instead of whole number, as we discussed before, we will select here a list, and then we will define the source from where we want to create the list, and we will select the source as it's, I want to make the list for this, the drop down list for these three values, and by clicking OK, now you see here a drop down list is selected here. Okay, after this data validation, So as we discussed here before, the data validation, in data validation we can define criteria for the whole numbers, decimal, list, date, time, text length and custom. So these are the different options which we can utilize by defining the criteria for data validation. So I will discuss the is blank here. For example, here for this cell I will highlight the cell first of all so that I can understand that which cell it is actually. Now for this cell I want to keep this cell as a blank in my Excel sheet. So what I will do, I will go to data, and in data I will click here data validation, and in data validation what I will do, I will select here custom, and here I will write my formula. So I will write here is blank and then bracket, start and close, and then I will click OK. Now if I want to write anything, my Excel will give me the error, the value does not meet the data validation restriction defined for this cell. So the restriction which we defined for this cell, the entry is not matching. So anything if you want to write, it will give you the same error. Okay, after this the second topic is input message. If you have applied a data validation on any cell and want the user to know what he can input in the cell. So for example, if you applied any restriction or data validation to this cell, and if you want to know that any user who want to use this sheet can understand that what's the criteria defined here, you have to define here the input message. To do that, go to data and data validation, and then input message, write the title and message. So for example, for this one, as I click any cell, a box is appear which is called input message, and in this input message, as it's written here, the title as data restriction, only dates from Jan to March is allowed. So how we can define this message for this specific cell? We will go to data, and in data we will go to input message from here, and here I can define my restriction. So I will modify here REC and date from January to March 22 is allowed here, and I will click here OK. So see, now my title is modified. So like this you can create the input message for your specific cell which contain a certain criteria. Okay, customize error messages. So if you applied any data validation rule to the cell, and while entering the data, if it is not satisfying the rule, Excel display the error. So as we discussed before, that if you have certain criteria, for example this cell for which the criteria as it's written here in the message number restriction 1 to 50. So in this cell we can input only 1 to 50 numbers. So if I click here 51, and by clicking enter, it will give me error number restriction 1 to 50 only. So the default error is not explanatory. You can define your own error alert from data validation and then error alert. So there are three types of error alert. One is stop, one is warning, and one is information. So how we can define the error alerts for this cell? We will go to data, and here we have error alerts. So in error alert, first of all we will select here stop, and we will write here the title has RESTRICTION destruction. And here the error message 01 to 50, and we will click OK. If we go to data validation and check the criteria for this cell, we have a whole number and the maximum is 1 and minimum is 1 and maximum is 1. So same we will define for the error alert. Here what we select, we here select the stop, and this is the symbol for the stop, and the restriction is the title for this error is title restriction, and error message is 0 to 150, and I will click OK. Now if I want to write here 51 now, and by clicking enter, see now here my title is coming restriction, and here the message is 0 1 to 50 only, and I can retry, and by clicking enter the message will come again. So I cannot input the data here. Cancel. Now the second option is in the error alert, we can make this as a warning. So by clicking OK, now if I want to write here 51 again, so now what the Excel will do, Excel will give me a warning that only 0 to 50 the data from in this cell is allowed is only from 0 to 50. But if you want to continue, by clicking yes, the Excel will accept here the data. So the difference between stop and warning is the warning will give you the warning, but it will accept the data, but stop will not accept any input data. The third option is information. So this is the symbol for the information, and by clicking OK, now if you write here 52 for example, it will give you only the warning, but it will accept the data. By clicking OK, the data will be accepted. After this we have circle individual entries. So for example, if you have data already in the cell and want to apply a data validation rule, for example here we have some data, these are some numbers already in my cells, and if I want to apply any rule for these numbers, the data validation rule will not affect the existing data. So if you define any criteria and any of the number is not falling on the criteria, the existing number will not be affected. But circle individual entries will, but the option circle individual entries will circle the data which is not satisfying the rule. But there is one option which is here circle individual entries, which will give you the idea that the defined criteria for the range of numbers, if you have any criteria and if you click this option, it will give you a circle which is not satisfying the rule. Okay, so this we can do from data validation, and in data validation we have here circle individual data. So first of all, what we will do, we will select here the numbers, and then we will go to data validation, and here we will define the criteria first of all. So the criteria is whole number and it is between 100 to 200. This is our criteria, and by clicking OK, now see 220 is not satisfying my criteria, but still the Excel will not remove it. Now what I will do, I will select again, and then now I will go to circle individual data, and by clicking here, see now AS220 is not satisfying my criteria, so it will give me a red circle on the cell, and I can remove the red circle by clicking the clear validation circle, so it will be removed. Advanced data validation tricks. So create dependent validation. The purpose of dependent validation is to follow certain protocols, i.e. first entry name, then age, and then date of birth. So here, for example, if I have a list here a detail for a person which contains the name, then age, and then date of birth. But what I want to do, I want to define here a criteria that before going to input the date, the name should be input first, and before uh, before input the date of birth, the age should be in the cell. So what I will do, I will select this cell and I will go to data validation. By clicking data validation, what I will do, I will select here custom as it's selected, and the criteria is not, sorry, the formula not, and then is blank, this one. And now what I want to do, I want to define the criteria for this cell, but I will select this cell which is F3 I believe, and I will click F4 to freeze it, and now I will close my bracket, and by clicking enter, see. Now if I want to define the age, the Excel will give me the error, because what I did here, I defined the criteria that this cell F3 should not be blank before the age. So I will click here cancel. Now I will write here my name, and by clicking enter, now age 23, and it will accept. Same is for the date of birth. I defined the criteria that it should, the first, this cell F4 should not is blank, F4. So for the data to be input against date of birth, the age should not be blank. So now if I want to input my date of birth, by clicking enter, it will accept. But first what I will do, if I remove this, delete, and if I want to define here now my date of birth, see, the Excel will give me the error, because what I did, I defined here the criteria that age should be input first before date of birth. Okay, the next is make subheading in data validation. So subheading in data validation, for example, if this is the list, and in lesson 2 we have part 1 and part 2 and then lesson 3, and if I want to create the drop down list for this, what I will do, go to data validation, and I will select here the list, and the source I will select this one, and by clicking OK, now see the drop down list is created, and see these are the two subheading. So how you can create the subheading, you have to input some blank spaces before the text. So if you put some blank spaces before the text, and then by drop down list, it will give you the idea that these two are the subheadings. This gives number as a text. So if you click here we have quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3 and quarter 4, but if you check from the formula bar, these are only 1, 2, 3. And if you want to create the drop down list for this, the procedure is simple, list, and then select the range, and by clicking OK, the drop down list is created here, Q1, Q2, Q3. But as we discussed that these are only the numbers, it's clear from the formula bar, but we have Q as a additional letter. How we can add this Q, as we discussed before, by clicking Ctrl 1, and I will click here general. So if you see now here, the drop down list is 1, 2, 3, but if you want to convert this to quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, what you will do, Ctrl 1, go to custom, and then click here double inverted comma followed by Q, and then again double inverted comma, and then click OK. So the format will be converted to Q1, Q2, Q3, And similarly, the drop down list will be created, which is Q1, Q2 and Q3. Okay, after this, create dynamic drop down list. So a dynamic drop down list, if you want to create, for example, you have years here and you don't know that how much year it will be. For example, after this, if you have expected 2016 and if you want to create the drop down list for this, see 2016 is added here. So what you will do, you will you have to define certain formula here. So what I will do here, I will use here the offset and count formula. So here, for example, what I will do, I will define here is offset, then tab, and then the reference. I will select the first cell. I will click F4, comma, row offset. I will keep here 0, and column offset I will keep here 0. And after this, the height I will define from the countIf function. Tab, and the range, I will select here the maximum possible range, comma, and now in the criteria, and I will freeze all this by clicking F4 and F4 here. And now for the height, the criteria is that it should not be equal to and length. And for the width, I will not define anything and I will click here enter. So what I will do now, I will copy this formula, Control C, and now I will come here and I will go to data validation, and here I will select the list, and in the source I will put my formula, Control V, and now I will click OK. So now if you see here, the drop down list is 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16. And if you want to add 2017, 2018, see the drop down list will be extended to 17 and 18. So like this, you can create the drop down list or dynamic ranges. So that's it for today's discussion. If you like the video, please follow and like my Facebook page Business Innovation and subscribe my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.